pleasure being here. I have to start by saying that, I've been around the block. I've been in .com, I've been in .gov, I've been in .org, and .edu. Basically can't hold a job. I was at the Pew Charitable Trust at one point, which was a .com at that point, and most printed closed from there. I wanted to start by saying that I'm writing an op-ed right now for a national newspaper on the GSA scandal, And I was thinking about on the way up here that, it affects all of you, it affects all of us. Because the drip, drip, drip of scandal and erosion of public confidence and social change undermines you just as much as it undermines the federal government. The federal government is a big scaler of what we do. And to the extent the public comes to believe that government is not a faithful partner and cannot be trusted, which is, of course, a recurring campaign theme, we undermine its ability to scale the really good ideas that are coming out of the community of innovators and advocates and researchers and social stewards who implement and fine-tune the stuff we do. The public says, why bother? And of course, it's in the discretionary budget that we cut, and that's where most of the stuff that we do towards social change occurs. That's not to say Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and unemployment insurance and buying big military systems are unimportant, but we reside in the discretionary budget, and these kinds of scandals erode confidence in government's ability to scale pretty much anything that we do. Paul Bloom, who may or may not be here, has written a book about scaling, which makes that point really quite clearly that ultimately we've got these big dissemination systems that are already in place, and if we can change them through advocacy and astute political engagement, we can get a lot done faster and in time to avoid the tipping points that we face in the very near future. And if the public doesn't have confidence in these institutions, and these institutions really cannot do their jobs effectively without overhaul and investment, then we're doing a lot of interesting stuff, but ultimately we can't get it to scale. So that's pretty much what I want to say about that. I'm here really to introduce the conversation, perhaps, by talking about 4 different kinds of social change, because we fixate on innovation. We love innovation. But the analogies between business innovation and social innovation are really quite flawed. We can learn a lot from business. Business can learn a lot from us. And of course, the big banks have learned a lot about microfinance from BRAC and the Grameen Bank. And they've also learned how to jack up the interest rates on microfinance, which is a recurring issue for Muhammad Yunus, and has gotten him into massive political tangles as he moves forward. There's real politics here. So over here in the business sector, where businesses can learn a lot from nonprofits and NGOs and hybrids and LLCs and LCCCs and whatever, we have always in the business sector the ability to knock out the prevailing wisdom, or what the Skoll Foundation would call the social equilibrium. We know how to knock it out. And it disappears. Any of you ever buy a flip phone? How many of you have a flip phone? Yeah. You using it still?
Yeah.
Oh, good for you. You're the last user on earth. It's gone. It's just gone. And in the business world, when we knock out a product, it's gone. It shows up in vintage stores. Record collection quite valuable, although I can't find needles for my turntable. I gotta buy those on eBay for Skoll, which is invested. It's always out there. It's always looking. Sometimes it lives in Alaska and can see Russia from the front porch. It lives in New York and is able to see deep cuts and discretionary budgets, but You know, it's always out there. We got to fight it. Part of your job in social change is to mount strong defense of your ideas, because your ideas may be very, very good and very effective, but ultimately most social change offends somebody to the point where they build a super PAC. And I don't see too many people in the social change space, especially in social entrepreneurship, who are working, for example, on campaign finance reform. Does it matter to you? Absolutely. I don't see too many working on how to incentivize high performance in government, the big scaler. Don't see too many of them. And I think you all need to understand that part of the ultimate change is the backlash against your idea, because this ain't a flip phone, right? This is the prevailing social wisdom. And when you hear about Obamacare and you hear states are thinking of nullification, you better know that you are in a serious, ultimate defense posture if you're successful. Because if I recall correctly, the Supreme Court invalidated nullification in the early 1800s, and it keeps coming back. So part of your careers involve and will involve defense. Now, there are 4 flavors of social change that I like to talk about. One is social entrepreneurship, the new idea. Now, in most cases, new ideas, nations of old ideas that are put together in creative ways. That's what we know about innovation in the private sector. We rarely have a really brand new, absolutely never expected idea. What we do get are new combinations of the kind that are celebrated by PopTech. I looked at the award winners of PopTech, and they're in all 4 areas of social change. Some are inventing new ideas for clean water and distributing clean water or vaccines or whatever, which is the social entrepreneurship space. We call it social entrepreneurship. We could call it social innovation. We used to call it innovation. We used to give awards to innovation. We sometimes call it visionary change. That's the Ford Foundation's model. We invest in visionaries on the front lines of change, whatever that means, but we've got lots of models out there, and we tend right now to be doing a lot of investing in what we call social entrepreneurship. But if you're like me, I write proposals that have social entrepreneurship in them, and this is between us, okay? I usually go through with a find and replace to change the word social entrepreneurship to whatever the words are in fashion at the foundation I'm approaching. And that might be social innovation. That sounds a little bit kind of awkward, but the languages are very different in foundation land. And some of the old foundations, what we really dismissively call legacy organizations, really don't buy the social entrepreneurship language because they want to be different and this and that. But you know what we're talking about here. We're talking about the new ideas list, and it can be a new program. It can be a new delivery system that we hadn't imagined. It can be a way of reducing waste in your organization. When we look back to the Austrian economists who came up with this notion of waves of creative destruction, they weren't just talking about new products. They were talking about new delivery systems. They were talking about new ways of creating markets, like the market we had to create for the Post-it note, which ironically were used to say goodbye to Steve Jobs. And they were all evenly placed on the store windows. Did you notice that? It's perfect. Post-it notes written in pen and pencil to celebrate one of the great innovators of our time. So we got social entrepreneurship, which is the first flavor. It's difficult. It's expensive. We do a lot of trial and error, and nobody likes trial and error in the social space. We tolerate a lot of trial and error, 50% failure rates among business entrepreneurs within the first 5 years, but we don't like failure in social entrepreneurship. We don't like it. We don't even acknowledge it. It's hard to get anybody to list the number of failures or to even identify the failed social entrepreneurship endeavors. So we can't learn much from them. Now, secondly, we've got social stewardship. Some of you are engaged in delivering the stuff. You take new ideas from social entrepreneurs, or you're fine-tuning yourself. Now, you're not fully engaged in social entrepreneurship. You're delivering the help. You're delivering the endpoint goal, but we're taking care of people along the way. I gave a speech to Feeding America a couple of years ago, and the first question from the audience was, what do we say to people who tell us that we're enabling hunger by feeding hungry people? My reaction was, tell them to go home and not eat for 3 days and come back and ask the question again. You know what I mean? So we got the second flavor, which is social stewardship, the people who are out there trying to meet the needs that are so apparent right now. And they're also fine-tuning along the way. There's a lot of innovation among the organizations that are delivering the stuff, like the food rescue movement that came out of the old food distribution movement. Third area are the social explorers, and I saw in top 10, several award winners, fellowship winners, who are doing basic research to define the problem and show the problem. Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who came from New York, once said that everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but not their own facts. Well, that's not true anymore. Everybody's entitled to their own facts, and we manufacture them right and left, and you know it. Climate change created by trees. Climate change created by trees, and that's a fact, as it's presented. Humans don't create climate change, cows do. Well, that's partially true, but boy, those electric cars sucking down energy from coal-fired plants, I don't know. Don't they create some CO2? So we need researchers out there who are defining problems and telling us where the leverage points are. And those of us who do that, we ain't very popular sometimes. Like, we'll tell somebody that, oh, by the way, your educational program ain't working real well. There's a lot of turnover in it. Your teachers do about as well as a novice teacher, but not quite as well, or not remotely as well as an experienced teacher. We don't get invited to the big conferences. I've never been to the gathering of leaders. I've never gotten an invitation. They don't want me to come. I'm like a baby on an airplane. When you're sitting there, you got a center seat, and you hear somebody walking down the aisle and they got a baby, and you say, oh, how warm and cuddly, oh my God. How dangerous. This could be a problem. It's a 7-hour flight to Berlin or whatever. Ooh. So the researchers who are doing some of the most important work to define the problem and the leverage points are not always popular with the social entrepreneurs or the social stewards who've already got their idea, and they're absolutely convinced it's the best thing ever. As my daughter would put it maybe 10 years ago. Finally, we've got social advocacy. And boy, are we scared of that. When you read the literatures on social entrepreneurship, you almost never find the word power. And you rarely find the word politics. If we believe that politics is not a realm for influence. Now, Alan Casey entered the Senate contest in Massachusetts, co-founder of City Year, and basically said, I'm going to work on this from the Senate. Now, he got defeated. He decided not to run this year. Coakley's very strong. She may take that seat from Scott Brown. This matters. Matters to everybody in this audience. The notion that social change is somehow divorced from political change is just nonsense. It's just rank nonsense. We've got to come together sometimes in alliances to get things done. And it's essential to scale. We can bring those new ideas forward, but how are we going to get them to really penetrate the prevailing wisdom? And to me, that involves politics, and I like politics. Something else. I don't necessarily believe I have to get along with anybody. Sometimes in politics, you got to fight for what you want. You got to fight for what you want. Yeah, everybody's about getting along in civil discourse, but sometimes tough arguments about big issues that matter are well worth having. And party line votes are just fine. I remember going down to Defeat when I was working for Senator John Glenn on veterans treatment for victims of post-traumatic stress disorder. We had a bill that went forward on the floor and we lost 87 to 13. Wow. So I was on the floor and I walked over to talk to Alan Simpson, former senator. I've got personal reasons for that. They made the hiring of 6,000 new. Simpson says to me, you know what? To be on the losing side position. And we got to beat them all the time. And so I don't want to offend people by being seen as partisan. But at the end of the day, folks, you're going to offend somebody, just like I'm sure I've offended somebody here. I've got a minute left. I admire the work that y'all do. I think we need to reach across the boundaries, artificial, that we've created among these different types of change, and engage in movements, engage in alliances, and work together to disturb the social equilibrium and defend your achievements. I wish you every good thing, and I hope this was helpful.